If we could just, are we being recorded today? Okay. Okay, all right. So I'm calling this meeting to order to the committee to study the impact of the housing crisis on people with disabilities. If we could just go around and introduce ourselves. Why don't you start, Representative Yokella?
Hello, my name is Representative Yokella. I am representing Rockingham District 32, and those are the towns of Fremont, Danville, and Brentwood.
Representative Jessica LaMontagne of Dover, New Hampshire, on Stratford 17.
Senator.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Denise Ricciardi, the state senator for District 9, which represents 13 towns from Bedford to Hinsdale. It's good to see you all here today for such an important issue.
I am Representative Kathy Staub. I represent Ward 5 in Manchester, which is Hillsborough District 25, and I am the chair of this committee. And so why don't we begin by looking at the minutes from the previous meeting and approving those. Thank you, Jessica, for doing such a thorough job. I think that they're fabulous. I did look at them earlier, and I do have one correction. Alyssa Alyssa Margolin, her name is spelled E-L-I-S-S-A. Okay. She's not an A Alyssa, she's an E Alyssa. Did you get it?
I did get it. Recording. Can you get your mic closer?
Okay, sorry. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, all right. E-L-I-S-S-A. E-L-I-S-S-A. Did you have a chance to see that meeting from last week?
I read the minutes.
Lori McIntosh came forward and issued an apology for her statements about that. Her comments about that money that you had found for that.
Oh, that was
Disability.
nice.
Yes, but she did it publicly. So.
I motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second that.
Abstain.
Aye. In favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay, here we go. So 3 of us approve and 1 abstention. Okay, all right. Oh, our task today is to look at what we want to include in the preliminary report. There is, we are required to produce a preliminary report by November 1st, which is in a couple of days. The committee has been authorized to continue into the next biennium for another year, at which point the committee will issue a final report. I put together some thoughts and I put them into a Word document and printed it all up for you and forgot them on my printer at home and realized that when I was halfway here. So our researcher is in the process of copying them, and there she is. So you'll have something to, to work off of as we are working on the report. Thank you.
Isn't there another member of the committee?
Yes, that Representative Welsh is in theory on the committee, so I guess his name probably should be on the report, shouldn't it? Yes,
Yeah.
okay, yes.
No. Well, maybe we'll make a note and must have looking at an email.
Yeah, that's why that's why this is a draft report. I just did this from the second page. There is a cover page also that I think we were emailed last week. It says the names of the people to whom the report will be given. And okay. So I had another thing that I noticed, Kristen, on the first page of that report is that it lists the state librarian as Michael York, and I believe he is retired. I believe he has retired. He's running for state senate in my city. Right. Or if there's an interim. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, before we go to the findings section of it, the committee charge and study purpose, number 2 says that the committee shall solicit information, and there's a long list of organizations that we were supposed to have spoken with. And we did speak with a lot of them, but there are some that we missed. So the actual law as written had a list of organizations that we were supposed to meet with and receive testimony from. And we got most of them, but we did not get all of them. So I think one of the recommendations should be that we follow up with individuals and organizations mentioned in the law that were unable to testify before us. Are you okay with that?
When you said that not all of them, it seemed to say that you were saying that not all of them came to testify, but in the law it just requires that we solicit them. So did we reach out to all of them? And maybe some of them didn't respond?
I believe that there were some that I did not get to reach out to.
Okay.
Because I was unable to find contact information for them, or I just was
Whatever
was
the
just
reason.
disorganized. There were, like
Pretty full.
Southern New Hampshire Services. I did not reach out to them. We did hear from the Community Support Network, which is, an umbrella organization for the providers. But I think, you know, that one of our recommendations can be to make certain that we reach out to individuals who were not contacted or who were not able to provide testimony during that first round. So,
That's good. It covers the bases of the report and the law.
Did you happen to see the email that I sent a little while ago to you?
yes, I did.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Okay, so, and I think that
That's-
on the first recommendation, which is, you know, to try to deal with the distinction between certification and licensure, that's, your thoughts seem to be related to figuring out how to get around that 3-person thing. So why don't you go ahead and explain what you
So,
sent to me?
so what I was, so I sent kind of like some draft thoughts to the chair earlier today. And one of the things, the first thing that was listed on my draft, like one of the things that I was thinking about was the definition of facility. But I looked at HE-M 1001 certification standards for developmental services and community residences. And they didn't specifically define facility, but they defined community residence, which means either an agency residence or a family residence exclusive of independent living arrangements. So family resident is defined in the same section, saying family residence means a community residence, essentially operated a specific way. And so those are circular definitions. One refers to the other. And I think that actually a family residence, we could potentially discuss with DHHS changing that circular reference back to say a family residence means a residential unit instead of community residence. And so residential units generally, like if you have an apartment, it has multiple residential units. And so you can have apartment A and apartment B, and those would be 2 separate facilities, even though they're in the same building, possibly. And so, you know, if you have 2 children that are developmentally disabled or whatever and receiving services, and then a person in the same building that's not even related to you, you don't know them, like they also have 2 people that are also receiving services that you're somehow not required now to be licensed in some way. And so maybe discussing that kind of language change might address some of the concerns that I have, especially for the low hanging fruit like that, that I'm thinking about. Maybe we could define residential unit within this area. Like I just pulled off something off online that said a housing unit is a single unit within a larger structure that can be used in an individual household to sleep, eat, and live. And so if you have a lease or whatever for that apartment, then that's kind of could be your residential, what is it called? Residential family residence. And I think that's what they were trying to get at, and not kind of classifying the entire structure. And so I think that working with them on that, because it's technically in rules, so it's not necessarily a law change. That would be required. It might just have to go to the rules committee or something to get a language change to see if that is possible to be changed. I think that is something that was the first thing that I thought. Just so everyone on the committee knows, I'll go down to the second one. I think that we should be recommending legislation that allows, that allows, what I heard from the testimony is that people with disabilities often that may not even be receiving services may rely on the neighbor next door or the person in the apartment across from them to be helping them with rare needs, but with needs that they have that if they didn't have that person, that resource may not be able to be independent and may have to be in a more structured kind of like living environment. So encouraging duplexes, triplexes, quadruplexes, and ADUs where the people are relatively close together should be something that is seen as helping those that are not disabled enough to need to go to like round the clock care, but may need, you know, help bringing out the garbage or bringing up, you know, groceries or something that is, you know, a rare occurrence, but maybe needed nonetheless. That can be seen as something that could be a barrier to them. And then next, I thought that we heard that kind of not all of the people with disabilities drive, and also find it expensive or hard to come by the transportation. And so having the ability to either have within commercial districts mixed use buildings that have residential and businesses in the same building, so that they could, you know, go downstairs to the grocery store or to the coffee shop or whatever, and wouldn't have to travel for every single thing in their life. That might be a beneficial opportunity for some that need that, and or being able to walk or roll if necessary to the to a business next door or something like that. So if they had a sidewalk or something like that, that may also help those people that are not able, and, you know, not even just people that are disabled, but people that can't drive for whatever reason, even if they're not disabled, you know, got in trouble with the law or whatever, too many DUIs, like that could be a situation that would be helpful for those people, not just the disabled communities. So I think that is something that the state should kind of encourage, if not say like, hey, if you know, you need to be not kind of forcing everyone into just Manchester and Nashua, but we want people to be able to live in their own communities. And so you need to have some place in your community that can be able to meet these guidelines. The next thing I was talking about was New Hampshire Housing Authority may or may not be able to use its loans that it provides for the creation of community residences under the HEM 1001. So I wanted to make sure that if the legislature needs to say like, hey, they can get this loan if they want to purchase this property and provide services there, that they would be able to take advantage of that. Because we are like, one of the things that we are trying to do is to be able to allow multifamily housing or low or just affordable housing options. And so if like just having more opportunities for these disabled people could bring the cost down for them, and not just you know, for everyone else. And then my last thing was kind of concern in general that the testimony that we're studying how the impact of housing crisis affected people with disabilities, and a lot of the testimony had to do with developmental disabilities and not so much about physical disabilities. And I had a little concern that that we maybe want to be soliciting some testimony specifically from people that have physical disabilities, so that we make sure that we're kind of being like addressing the entire kind of community. All right, those are the things that I came up off top of my head.
Oh, thank you so much for doing that research.
Absolutely.
That's great. Okay. All right. So, can let me just go through the findings that I put down and see if there's anything that we want to add. The first finding that I had was the certification versus licensure distinction is a barrier to developing new housing for people with developmental disabilities. It adds significant cost to construction, maintenance, and management of these types of developments. And I think that that's one of the things that you were talking about with the change in that definition. So do we all agree that that is something that we uncovered during this process? And are there changes that you think we should make to the wording there? Do you think it needs to be more specific, or is that?
I agree with you. We heard a lot from the people in the community that there's too much confusion on these definitions, and there's no one place for anyone to go and actually get help. I think we should take those suggestions that were given to us, try to and work with the department so that we can remove any objections, and then we could maybe make that change, and that would be a good stepping stone to what else we have to do.
Right. We may uncover in the process, we may uncover other things that we might be able to do through rulemaking or legislation that will make it easier for individuals or groups that want to build housing for people with developmental disabilities. Okay. All right. The next finding, and this was specifically from the Granite State Independent Living folks. There is a severe shortage of units in the state to accommodate people with physical disabilities. Less than 5% of housing units are considered accessible, and less than 1% are wheelchair accessible. And retrofitting existing buildings is difficult and expensive. So that was something that we heard from Granite State Independent Living. And, do we agree that that was a finding, or should it be worded differently? Go ahead. Yeah.
I definitely didn't take away, maybe from them, but other people, that I don't believe that there is that the state should be essentially saying that every house, needs to have this certain kind of structure, like that you have to build the bedrooms on the first floor or whatever. The bathroom has to be curbless or something like that. I feel like I think those are individual design choices within, family residences. And it's good to know, like being able to how the difficulty of moving in between locations for a person with disability, but I don't think that the intention should necessarily be that we have to do 100%, universal design on every building in the state, kind of a thing. I don't think that is something that it can be brought up as maybe like encouragement, but I don't think that at least that's a feeling I got from the testimony, that it shouldn't be mandated that everyone do a universal design or something like that. Right.
Okay, Representative Lamontagne, and then Senator Ricciardi.
Yeah, I agree with some of that, but I think what we wanted to do was first identify the problems that we found, and then we say move on to recommendations, unless you want to deal with each of those finding and recommendations one at a time? How do you want it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we were doing or we just say for each, we'll discuss what we found and then discuss the recommendation for each one at a time.
Okay, all right, well, all right, Senator Ricciardi?
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
We probably should be identifying first if there's something we can do this upcoming session legislatively, like
Okay.
maybe fix the rules. I think we should tackle that
Mm-hmm.
and nudge things forward. But identifying a lot of these problems, the solution is not quick, and we're
Mhm.
going to have to try to find these solutions.
Right, right. Well, I think Representative Lamontagne's point is well taken. One thing that I did put in recommendations directly in response to that was to investigate whether existing housing programs such as the New Hampshire Housing Trust or the 79E program can be used to incentivize builders to include universal design in new construction projects. Because, and we had asked the folks from New Hampshire Housing to give us some information on what the differential in cost would be between just building a unit and building one that was built to be accessible. So that was just, something that I thought we could look into as an incentive program, not a mandate.
I agree with that.
I mean, did you get the response back? Because I heard that there was concern that retrofitting existing buildings is difficult and expensive. Obviously, maybe to universal design that would be, but maybe if someone just needed, a curbless shower or something, it wouldn't necessarily be prohibitively expensive. If you needed to widen the hallways or something, maybe that would be. But and so I don't remember seeing the answer of how expensive it was in general. So I'm not sure that I can
Well,
be sure that it was.
Representative Lamontagne, go ahead.
As someone that does a lot of bath remodeling work, it would add a lot of money. I mean, the cheapest bathroom you could build is just buying a curved shower stall and installing it, and then doing anything custom to make it accessible is a lot more money, like 50 to 100% more. But that doesn't mean, my thoughts on this subject is that any new multifamily project needs to make a certain percent of those units with universal design, even if it's retrofitting a 3-unit apartment building to a whole remodel. It may, one of them has to be accessible. But I agree that mandating that every new unit be built to universal design would increase the cost of housing tremendously, and therefore we're causing a lot of other problems for people who need housing. We need more housing with limited resources.
Senator? Yeah.
I'm just thinking out loud, so this
Okay,
may
good.
not be a good idea, but a couple sessions ago, I worked with the New Hampshire Housing Authority and Ben Frost to do a pilot program was to make things affordable. So the American dream is to own your own home. That really hasn't changed. It's just not affordable. It's not affordable for families with disabilities. It's not affordable for single people, young families, but they want that, even if it's small and tiny and in a community. And so it took a lot of traction, and I got the bill very far, but then it ultimately died. And I'm just wondering, to address the fact of choice, where some families with disabilities want to live in communities with all people, I'm wondering if I reintroduce this pilot as a good test, see what, if it passes, what kind of progress. And it will include all people, but a priority for families with disabilities. And these are actually made, I got the idea from Maine, and they're actually made out of like a concrete, but they're beautiful, with 3D printing. And it's really amazing. It would be affordable for the state to partner in this because I already got them to agree to do it as a pilot in general. It just didn't get all the way through the process. So again, I'm thinking out loud, but it would be a test and it would fulfill broad families with disabilities like this committee has been tasked with, but it'll also help with anyone else. You'll have to qualify. There'll be a process. And I just, again, I apologize. I'm just thinking out loud as something that we could maybe try legislatively for now in conjunction with making it easier with the rule change. And I've been talking to the New Hampshire Builders Association in trying to work with me and work with with Ben Frost. And so I'm going down the path of giving that a whirl. I just want to know if there's any support for that here in this room.
I think that's a cool idea. And I think that where you're looking at everything being 3D printed, then it would just be a matter of the design being different in order to be accommodating. Because you know you wouldn't be dealing with wood, or what you'd be dealing with a plastic substance that could be include ramps, wider doorways, etc. But I don't really know enough about. I'm just speculating that that's how that works because I haven't really done it. But yeah, that seems like an interesting idea. Yeah, I would co-sponsor that with you.
Okay.
Okay. Representative Yokela.
Um, I'm not sure that I understood what the pilot program was exactly, because I mean, I've seen the 3D printing of houses before. Are you suggesting that the pilot program was so that some 3D printed houses are done in New Hampshire, or the pilot program was like subsidizing like the loan of it, or how what was the exact nature of the pilot program?
It needs to be worked out a little bit better, but it was a combination of all the above. The reason it didn't get through is in finance. We had the housing champion bill, and it was just too much money, so mine got swept away. But I think it could be revisited and the details worked out. But this time we could have the focus on all affordable, but making sure there's a priority for families with disabilities. I don't know how I'm going to do that or if I should, but I think there's potential there. I just have to work with the people who have the knowledge.
Representative Lamontagne, you have the most building experience of anyone here. What do you know about 3D printed houses?
I don't know anything about them, but my first thought is like, where do you get all the plastic to feed into that printer?
They're
we're
concrete.
talking.
It's not plastic.
It's concrete.
It's concrete.
And
Oh, okay.
It's
I
not-
have seen a little
They
bit
have a
of
big. It's like a nozzle that goes around and
Yeah.
prints the walls, and then you can have it like plastered or whatever, so that it's, instead of having like the ridges, it's all looks like flat, but it's totally
mean,
awesome. But there's
I-
there's
I-
multiple ways that you can get.
I imagine you would still need a lot of finish work and other surfaces that involve labor and materials to make it so you're not just living in a concrete cell. I mean, you still need electrical wiring and plumbing. I mean, I don't know that it would be a huge cost savings, but it's
Yeah. So
it
yeah,
seems like it's quite a few years down the road before that's
yeah. Well, I think
workable.
they are doing it in Maine, and I the thing with the plumbing and the electrical, most of that would be the same for whether you were building the house for able-bodied people or with a family that had someone with a disability. I think, again, the additional expense would go toward, things like bathroom fixtures, et cetera, that you're not going to make out of poured concrete.
Yeah.
That would be scratchy. Senator?
They look nice. I mean,
Yeah.
if you
Oh,
see
yeah.
how nice, you'd never know. They're small, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to think a little bit out of the box. That all ideas may not be good ones, including my own, but
Yeah.
I want to try
Mhm.
to move the needle. We have to take bites of the apple. There isn't going to be any one solution. I mean, maybe we can see if the state can put in something that would give us more federal matching dollars. That may be a possibility too. But we have to discuss all the ideas to find the solutions.
Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts on universal designs before we go to the next finding? Okay, then the next finding was that people who receive their income from Social Security disability or supplemental security income do not make enough money to rent market rate apartments. The waiting list for housing choice vouchers in New Hampshire is 6 to 8 years. Currently, 6,300 elderly or disabled people in New Hampshire hold vouchers, and another 12,000 people are on the waiting list. So, we did hear from some people who were developed disabilities later in life who were unable to find apartments that they could afford because they were no longer able to work and were on disability and had applied for housing choice vouchers and were not able to secure them. And we also heard from New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority that there aren't enough of them to go around. So do we have any thoughts on how we might be able to look into that? I mean, one person suggested that the state would be able to put money into the voucher account, and they said in Massachusetts they were doing some of that, or creating there are two kinds of units. There's the one that's transferable that goes to the individual, and then they have to find an apartment, and then there are the other ones where the subsidy is tied to the individual unit. So you build an apartment building, like elderly housing or whatever, and each one of those units, for the people who live there, they only need to pay 1/3 of their income, and then the rest of it is paid by a federal rent voucher.
I would say the first problem is that those Social Security checks are not high enough. And maybe we make a strong recommendation to our federal delegation that they work on increasing that, along with overhaul of the whole funding mechanism, that the cap on contributions to Social Security is still capped at like $130,000 a year. And after that, you don't contribute more of your income. So that needs to be lifted. So first of all, more money into Social Security. But I got the impression from, who was it? Alyssa, that she thought trying to get increases in vouchers for HUD is not going to happen. And that a better thing would be increasing the state through the real estate transfer tax, increasing the funds that go into the state affordable housing fund, so that maybe the state can help directly finance some new projects that include housing for people with disabilities.
All right, Senator.
I want to bring up another problem so that we will be able to figure out something. We heard a lot of testimony from people who needed procedures in the hospital, and they the hospital can't let them go home if they don't have a home to go to, or they are not able to be fit at home. And that's keeping beds from other people who need to be in the hospital. So that is another problem that we're going to have to look at. They just can't release somebody when they have nowhere to go.
Yeah, some of them end up in shelters in Manchester. Because they have no home to go to, so we have people that are brought directly from the hospital to the shelter in Manchester. And that's no good either. Okay. So yeah, I agree that is a problem that
But as far as specifically that, that people can't afford the market rate apartments, I mean, one thing would be if there is a large project going in anywhere that we can't really mandate that it's the towns and cities that approve those projects, but we could perhaps recommend, or maybe it is a state. We could move toward requiring a certain percent be set aside for that are affordable. I mean, we're talking, there's so much money going into housing in this state, a tremendous amount of money.
I don't
And if we
think
can't use some of those resources, we're really in trouble.
I don't think I like local control. I don't think you can mandate, but I think you can incentivize.
Yep.
I don't think that works out too well when you start mandating things. I think we have to find a better way to incentivize, maybe in a tax credit or something like that, rather than more taxing, tax credit.
if I may, I do think that there are, like there are programs where people get, federal guaranteed loans, or they get tax credits from communities, et cetera. And I don't think there's anything in law that would allow a city or town to say, yes, we will give you this variance. Yes, we will give you this, this 5-year tax abatement, but only if you include some affordable units in this, 50-unit apartment building. I don't think that by law you can do that. So
I think they do.
yeah,
Or
in Dover they
there's
have
some
been
way,
doing it.
There's
Yeah.
some way that it gets
Yeah.
done.
In Manchester, they tell us it's impossible because it would be illegal. But in Dover, they've been doing it.
I agree that it's illegal. Whether or not that Dover is doing it, that's a question for the courts. I definitely am not in favor of suggesting changes to Social Security. However, I do think that the New Hampshire Housing Authority, I think it's only $5 million, that if we want to see more projects being done, then yeah, increasing that amount of money from the real estate transfer tax makes more sense, because more money means more projects are going to be able to be, money is going to be able to be lent out for that. And so I think that's definitely something that should look into, definitely in the next budget cycle, for sure.
Yeah. And I think that is really a good idea, and I think but I still feel like maybe providing some kind of a bonus from that money to developers who are willing to put in a unit or two of universal design housing in a large project, as an incentive, not as a mandate.
I definitely liked, yes, that idea as far as if there was if we had some number of it's 10% or 15% more added to the project, if the state wanted to earmark some money and say like, hey, we want you to do a program or a pilot program for a couple of years where we're going to, give you 25% or whatever if you do a certain amount of the units, or maybe we put you higher up on the list or whatever, like give you more points as far as your, they're trying to get points or whatever to get higher in the funding. That maybe one of those categories for points could be the number of units with universal design or something like that.
That's great. That's a great idea. Yeah, because when we heard from New Hampshire Housing Finance, they did say that all of their they have a competitive process, and it is based on points. So, adding, for projects that come out of the affordable housing fund, I don't even know. I'm so sad you're not going to be here. I wouldn't even know like how to where would that lever be? Would it be legislative to say that? Do we get to say how the points are awarded in the affordable housing trust process? Or is that something we would need to do more research on?
Are you saying, is that mandated at the federal level and we can't control it because it's
Yeah.
HUD funding?
It's definitely no. The New Hampshire Housing Authority is funded through the real estate. Well, the $5 million
Right.
that we're talking about loaning out, and comes from our New Hampshire real estate transfer tax.
Right.
A certain amount of money of that goes to that fund, and then the rest goes to our general fund. And so that's New Hampshire's money. And so the strings are our strings that we put on. So I think that those rules for New Hampshire housing are probably in rules, and our impact of them can be legislative, but generally it's going to be through the rule setting committee.
Okay.
And so I think that working with New Hampshire Housing to say like, hey, we were thinking that this would be good, gauge their interest, gauge their, like, is there some hurdles towards that? And then reaching out to the people on the rule setting committee and say, hey, we want to implement this. How do we achieve that? I think is the next steps for that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think most of the money from the New Hampshire Housing Authority comes from federal funds. That
Right.
$5 million is hardly going to build one apartment building.
That's correct, but if it was
Right. So
yeah,
that's
so if
federal.
if there is a project that's getting money from a bunch of different buckets, as an incentive, to get some of the money from the New Hampshire Housing Trust, because that $5 million, as you said, would not go very far for one project, but as a as we're able to get more money put into that fund, then we would have more that we could put toward building
Yeah.
housing for people with disabilities. So
I think another concern that I heard in our hearings is that there are a lot of buildings that were built for 30-year plans to provide so many units that are affordable or accept vouchers, and those are about to expire, like a lot of them. So there's going to be an even more shortage. So, but probably these buildings after 30 years are going to need major renovations, and they'll be looking for new capital to do that. And if we can also incentivize that they continue to accept vouchers if they want any funding to do that, rather than have them all converted to market rate rental units.
And, I still think it would be a good idea to reach out to the members of the federal delegation. I mean, there is not necessarily about, increasing the amounts but also specifically related to housing. And there's a couple of things like the Fair Claw Amendment, which forbids construction of new, like, housing projects that are owned by the local housing authority. Like, when in Manchester, we have things like the uh, Elmwood Gardens and the Rock Rimmon Project, et cetera, and they're not allowed to build that kind of project anymore because of the Fair Claw Amendment, because they moved away from doing that specifically in building affordable housing to the voucher system where they could put those funds into the private sector. So I still think that it would be worth talking to them and seeing if there's, because and the other thing is that we think we can change the rules here in New Hampshire so that we can allow for more flexibility in housing people with disabilities, but HUD may think otherwise. And I think having the federal delegation on our side to maybe advocate for our people in New Hampshire might be worth doing. Just because it's a potential barrier to doing what we're hoping to do. Go ahead.
If you were to say something like, we recommend to the federal delegation that they work with HUD to allow more flexibility in the administration of the from our local housing authority to suit the needs of our state more particularly, then I think that is definitely, and also doing just whatever that they can do at the federal level. Obviously, they're working at a different, different projects, but anything that could possibly bring more options for housing to people in general and people specifically with disabilities, then that would be a help, because it's not something that the state is going to be able to completely solve on its own. We're going to need individuals building homes, municipalities getting out of the way so that they can build homes, people at the the federal issue also, but it's at all levels, and the biggest impact that we have is obviously on the state level, but we need those other people to partner with us, I guess, in solving the issue.
Well, and I put down additional housing vouchers, which doesn't seem to be like we have an appetite for that. But how about just additional resources? Because that could be a variety of things. So,
That's good.
all right. Okay, all right. The last thing that we heard about last week was a New Hampshire Medicaid housing benefit program that was signed into law in 2022 and has yet to be implemented. That was what Alyssa was talking about, that there had been a law that was passed in the budget, and it hasn't been implemented yet. So it was signed in 2022. So I want to look into that. I think that's a recommendation, to look into that law and why, what's the holdup?
Yep.
Is everyone, because,
Yep.
you know, that's for supportive housing. And that would be a huge, a huge boon to the people who are, you know, trying to provide supportive housing to people. Okay, the last thing that I have on here that we learned about was the state's stable savings program that allows people who receive benefits to save money without losing benefits, and that this is a resource that can be used to pay for housing, whether rented or purchased. Does anyone have any recommendations about what we can do with that knowledge to help move the process of finding safe, affordable, and appropriate housing for people with disabilities?
And for me, I've been thinking about that a little bit. Like my stepdaughter, who has Down syndrome, and has been in a very stable home care providership administered by one of the area agencies, and has Medicare, so her housing and her health care are taken care of, and also the housing includes most of her food. Since the pandemic, she has been making more money in her part-time job, and she is actually saving money, which is great. Though, as a family, we sort of save that money for her. Okay, could be in a stable account, but there are a lot of people who are on disability that became disabled later. They weren't born with the disability. They became disabled that aren't eligible for that. And also, as we heard from several people, they just barely make ends eat. It's not possible It's not possible for them to save money, period, when they can barely pay for their housing and their food. As it is, there's nothing left over. So I don't know how expanding this program would help that population who are the ones really struggling right now.
Yeah, well, one of the things that they did say was that the people who have set up trusts for their disabled children can transfer that money from the trust to this stable account, and then and use it for housing. So it's kind of a stopgap in
Right.
between. And
But if like in Eliza's case, she doesn't need the money for housing.
Right.
The money for housing comes from all of her Social Security goes to the state agency,
Mhm.
and they use other resources. And I don't fully understand it. I don't think it's a Medicaid waiver, but possibly. So, and what I'm saying is, she doesn't need a stable account to pay for her housing. That's taken care of. It can, so, it's not benefiting a certain population that needs the money to pay for rent. Like many of the people that we heard testimony about that were struggling to pay rent with their fairly recent onset disability would not be eligible for this anyway, and they wouldn't have any extra money to put into it.
Well, I think, if I may, one of the concerns that we've heard an awful lot from parents of adults with disability is what happens to their children after they're gone. They're living at home with their parents. So in that case, there wouldn't be anybody to manage that money for them. I mean, the family, if the family was no longer there to manage the money and hold the account for that person, like when I hate to say this, but when you and your husband are gone, who's going to manage Eliza's account? Will she be able to have a savings account with any more than $2,000 in it if she wants to,
Yeah.
buy stuff?
Well, you set it up and, like with Social Security, you have a rep payee that manages your account, and then she would have someone else, like her sister. But the idea of having Eliza in a stable home care providership, you hope that the area agency will continue to look out for her interests. She will continue to have an independent case manager looking out for her interest. But like the stable program can have the advantage of other family members contributing to it, if as long as I understood that correctly. But again, there will be a lot of people that don't have the family support that are going to contribute independently to their stable account to help them out.
All right. So, well,
There was one other suggestion I heard a few times, is that there needs to be someone at the state, either in the Bureau of Developmental Disabilities or somewhere else at DHHS, whose specific job it is to help these families that are trying to set up new housing facilities, that these families have felt they're all on their own trying to figure it out. They don't know who to call. And, to sort of set up one person, and hopefully you could do it without having to create a new position, but say to Health and Human Services or BDS, let's appoint someone whose job it is that's going to help families that are trying to create new housing situations, to redefine the job definition and then make that clearly known across the community that they're there to help.
Senator.
I think you've covered this very well, by the way. Thank you for doing that for the preliminary report. And I just think we should also put in there that we need to sit down, not individually, but we have to have the New Hampshire builders, the developers, the Invest New Hampshire, the medical hospital association director, and we should have them all at once. And the real estate people, because all this impacts everybody, and try to get everybody coming together for a solution where everybody's on board, so that we're not trying to do one thing and then you get this other entity that objects, and then we spin our wheels. I think if we can give everybody a seat at the table, that we could probably come up with something that's doable. And that might be a good addition to the report, because it shows what we're trying to do going forward.
All right. So are you looking at possibly creating a commission?
Commission, that sounds like a commission.
Yeah,
to
it
me.
does.
I'm just trying to think about the best way to move forward.
Yeah, I'm open to making the recommendation that, we appoint a commission.
I don't know how to move forward without having all these people have a seat at the table, but maybe someone else has an idea, but they all need to be part of this process.
Yeah.
Is there a commission to look at housing more generally,
Well, there's,
other than the special committee that we had in the legislature?
I don't believe so. Representative Yokela is on that study committee or that committee.
No, I don't believe that there is a commission specifically about housing. As far as I know, I don't know that there is.
I wonder if, like, in the maybe in the, um, resource, business and resources or department that the state has, if they've got people that are looking at the housing situation, because the lack of housing has had such a significant impact on the ability to attract and retain workers and build businesses. So I'm wondering if there's something in there. But again, this is a very specialized kind of focus. I mean, you know, the um the agenda, would be different than it would be where you're looking at people with disabilities and significant, health issues and needs that are, you know, um, needs for support that they probably wouldn't even think about. So I'm open to putting that recommendation in there. No, there's no saying that just because we put it in our recommendations, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, right?
That's right. But
Right.
if we don't have all those people on
Right.
board to come to the table, I don't know how we can have the most impactful solution.
Yeah, I agree. I think it seems like a good idea. Does
I mean, I think that in some sense, a special committee on housing creates a study committee that then creates a commission. Like, I feel like at some point we're kind of like chasing our tail. But yes, I'm not opposed to it. I just think that it could have been like, those representatives could have been on the study committee, right? It could have been like, would they have to start all over again and listen to all of the same testimony all over again to just to get back up to speed of where, or are you saying like, here's a commission on a specific focus that we have identified based on listening to all of the testimony, we want to, fix a commission on the, a 2-year commission or a 4-year commission on fixing the impact of the licensure and certification process, and get those stakeholders that are trying to create them and DHHS and legislatures all in the same room and say, we're going to fix this problem and make it easier for you to create housing for these people, right? Or are you just going to be like, okay, I want you guys all in a room and I want you to fix housing for disabled people, and that's essentially the same as this committee, right?
Well,
Yeah.
my thought was that we have subsequent meetings that we invite them and ask them to come so that we can pick their brains and get them on board with suggestions that the real estate people or the New Housing Hampshire Authority or the developers don't object when we actually make legislation, that they got a seat at the table. I wasn't thinking of another committee, but inviting them where they can come multiple times to be a part of this so that they're not negatively impacted, but want to find solutions.
Over the next year, you mean?
What
Yes.
what
Yeah.
about a bill to add them to this committee?
I think that might be
A good idea.
well, I think it's a good idea, but I think the reason that, we're, as a rookie legislator and as someone who has never done this before, the rules and the requirements for a legislatively appointed study committee limit the level of conversation that can take place. And I recall a couple of weeks ago when they were here from the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority, that they sought out the opportunity to have offline conversations about some of the issues that we brought up with them. So I don't know that in this structure that we can have the kind of back and forth that you would like to that you think, well, and I believe are necessary in order to move the process forward. So, I think going forward, what I was looking at is having the conversations, going to DHS or BDS and sitting down with them and saying, okay, what do you think? And then maybe talking to somebody in HUD and, just trying to focus in on these little things, but, these individual issues and problems. But yeah, I agree with you that, the whole, it's a big problem with a lot of moving parts that not including people could create unintended consequences. And I think that's what we need to avoid.
That's what I was, yes, trying to get at is
Yeah.
that.
So, and I don't know how commissions operate. I've never been on one.
Oh, I was
Have you?
on one before I was even in the legislature. I was appointed by the governor.
Uh-huh.
So, and there's people from all different backgrounds that come, and then you meet. It was during COVID, so we were Zooming, but, and then the same thing, you do your reports and recommendations are made, and then legislation came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a year long,
Yeah.
but I just feel we need more of those experts.
Mhm.
And we want them to all be on board and on the same page. I'm just thinking out loud
Right.
because this is the time that we can,
Well, one thing that we can do, and putting forward our recommendation, is to say that we need to hear from more of the stakeholders and then, list the ones that you have mentioned about how, we want to engage with them and not necessarily figure out, it might not be in this environment. It might be freedom of information laws and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if more than two of us from this committee are allowed to go talk to somebody from the hospital association and have a private conversation. I mean, because then we would have a quorum, and then then everything would have to be public. I just basically we want to get the information and build the relationships. But I don't, I'm not 100% sure that this setup is is the best way to do that.
what about if we sent an email to all of those I listed?
Mm-hmm.
Tell them we're inviting your input to have a seat at the table. We are tasked with finding solutions to these things.
Mm-hmm.
You are an important part of this process.
Okay.
Please give input.
Okay.
Maybe that would be a way to get it at least on paper, and see what they say, and it can kind of get everybody all at once. One email to the whole list of all of them.
Okay.
The Real Estate Association, the New Hampshire Builders Association, the Hospital Association, the developers, and New Hampshire Housing Authority, and say, this is what we're tasked with. This impacts you. We want your input.
I wonder if we could set up like a longer workshop to that effect.
Working group, I think.
A working group, but even to have, if there's any funding available to like hire someone to help facilitate this. I mean, it's a lot for us volunteer legislators to organize an event that could be really productive and bring everyone together rather than, just having these meetings in the LOB. It's an idea.
I'm also wondering if there would be a potential to set up some sort of, I'm going to call it a public-private partnership, where that we're at the table, but we're not necessarily the conveners.
Yes, that's sort of what I was saying.
So is that possible?
So I think there is some some housing related conferences and stuff like that that are specially done by the Institute for Politics or something at St. Ansem. Like they have stuff as far as like people from kind of that all kind of come together on a specific day and talk
Yep.
about like what's going on. Maybe they might be interested in doing something like that for on this topic as far as that, where they bring all the people together and see like, hey, these are our problems, these are our solutions, what are your thoughts, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And then if we just attended as and hear their thoughts, then that would be a way that you could achieve that,
Or
what you're thinking.
UNH.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the,
something
I
like that.
believe the program that you're talking about is the Housing We Need project that the Business and Ethics Institute, which I think they've
Sounds-
changed their
sounds
name. But yeah,
correct.
I've actually attended a couple of those.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, but again,
And
I think that,
yeah, I was also when I looked up the woman who came from the Institute for Disabilities at UNH. I looked her up on their website, and they have a huge staff of people. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of resources that we could hopefully put to work on this problem. That that's what they're paid to do. Could we not, bring them to the table to help organize a symposium or?
Maybe even the New Hampshire Builders Association, they're always hosting things.
Yeah.
I think there's potential,
Okay.
but we do need all that input.
right.
We just do. I mean, on hindsight, I do wish we had appointed people with those qualifications onto this too.
Right, but then it wouldn't be a study committee, it would be a commission.
Well, I,
Yeah, but all right, well,
we're just this is
we're
we're just,
imaginative.
and we are. We're
yeah,
talking. We're thinking
yeah.
out loud.
Yeah, I think that all of that sounds like a good idea. Again, we, I'm trying to figure out how, because the Institute on Disabilities is, part of I think they're part of the university system.
Yeah.
So can we, again, would it be a mandate if we put in our recommendations? I don't know.
Well, we can't force people
Right.
to attend
Yeah,
something.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I
but
wouldn't want to.
if-
And I wouldn't want, if they wanted, I wouldn't want to try to force them to take this on if it's not something they want to do. But I think we need to investigate the possibility of having some organization that is specific to helping people with disabilities to possibly be the convener and help bring everyone together in an environment where there is parity between the people who are interacting. Because I mean, this is not a convivial kind of setup here.
I also think that if you explain to these entities that we're going to do some legislation and it's going to impact you and your business, we're offering you a seat at the table to help with these solutions. I think if they realize that they're going to be a willing partner.
I think that's a great idea. Okay. All right. So I have been writing furiously. I probably should have been typing this into the notes that I had in there, but
I've been typing a lot. So.
yeah, thank you so much. So okay, so all right, that all okay. Is there anything else that we would like to include either as findings or recommendations? I
Well-
will be hoping. This is due on the 1st of November, so.
I've been thinking a lot about the situation again with people who become disabled. And they are in some of the toughest situations because in order to get help for their serious medical condition, they're best off if and they can't work like they used to work. So they don't have private health insurance from their job. If they're just on Medicaid, they can't go to just any doctor because most private practices don't take Medicaid. They can go to the ER and maybe a community health center, and that's about it. So their best bet is to get on, apply for disability, then they get on Medicare. But it takes, on average, 7 years to get that disability approved. So you're stuck for 7 years. But then when you get it, you can't work. So, because most people would probably prefer to work and like make a little more money without losing that health insurance, which for people with disabilities, it's Medicare. So they're really stuck. So I don't think we can ignore some of these big systemic problems that come from the way Social Security and Medicare is mandated at the federal level. It has a tremendous impact on people's resources. And I think we've heard so many situations where if they have a disability and they're lucky enough to get on Medicare, then they're sort of stuck in poverty and they don't have enough money to pay rent.
Yes, Senator.
I hear what you're saying, and I concur by what we've heard in this room, but we have to remember one thing. As much as we would love to fix all of these problems, this committee is tasked with to study the impact of housing crisis on people with disabilities. So we have to stay focused on that, even though it'd be great to fix everything, because then we may not get this fixed. Like, I think we have
Right.
to really focus on exactly what we're tasked with.
Right. But I think that could be included as a finding that contributes to why people are in the situation they're in.
Yeah, as a finding.
They have a disability and they can't work or they lose their health insurance. And that is a significant reason why they don't have enough money to pay market rate rent.
That was one of the things that I did want to include, that people who are disabled tend to be very low income and can't compete in the market rate housing market. And yeah.
It should be included. I just want to make sure we have a light at the end of this
Right.
road here.
Right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, that was a lot.
I guess it
I
was.
don't. Is there anything else that people want to? Yeah. Okay. So, all right. Is there anything else that people would like to add? I'm going to stay here for a little while. Trying to sort through. I see you guys have these beautiful binders. I have a bag full of paper, and I'm carrying around the original folder, which I need to
Would
get
you like
everything
me to
into.
make you a binder?
No,
I
that's
would do
okay.
that for you.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. This is an issue that goes back to, I would say, 6th grade with me. The binder thing. I was always wanting the paper stuffed in the desk. Anyway, yeah. So what are folks' last words? And then we can adjourn, and I can sort through the paper.
Well, it was a pleasure serving with you guys.
Likewise.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated your institutional knowledge and helping me navigate and jumping through the hoops in the right order, which I did my best. And I probably came closer because of your participation. Last words?
Just looking forward to continuing to work together and get results. It's all about the results.
So just for the process, after we reconvene, we would ask the speaker to appoint someone else to, like, fill.
It will happen automatically.
It will, we don't need, we don't
Need to
need,
make a motion to approve the
Preliminary.
preliminary report as discussed in this meeting? Because if so, I will make that motion.
Okay,
I'll second it.
all right,
All
all
right.
right, thank you. All in favor?
I
I,
I guess I'm supposed to say without objection, right?
mean, you can do either.
and then, but do we say that, subject to, all of us reviewing it, afterwards by email, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
To make any minor corrections or adjustments, yeah, okay.
That sounds terrific. Okay, all right, so I will get to work on that, and I will send it out to you at ASAP, and it's been really good working with all of you. I really appreciate getting to know you all better, and learning.
Motion to
So much.
adjourn then?
Yep, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right.
Second?
Okay. All those, without objection.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we are adjourned
Okay, thank you.
until we
Thank you.
reconvene.